Jeanette, are you ready? No. Okay. Happy to wait. It's loud tonight. I don't have to talk so loud. I don't want to shout. I've already been accused of shouting a lot in my lifetime. Seems so. Oh, sorry. Thanks. All right. I'd like to call to order the December 2nd, 2024 reorganization meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and those viewing remotely as well. The purpose of tonight's annual organization meeting is to elect a president and vice president for the coming year. Immediately following the organizational meeting tonight, we'll convene the committee of the whole and regular board meeting directly following. So the first order of business is to elect a temporary president to chair the organization meeting. May I have a nomination for the temporary president?
Looks like Ann's going to do it.
Yeah, okay, so I nominate Carlene.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. That's been moved and seconded. Any further nominations for temporary president? Seeing none, and if there's no objection, I'll declare the nominations closed. Is there any discussion on the motion to elect Dr. Crevecoeur as temporary president? All right. Any public comment on this item? All right. Seeing none, board members in favor of electing Dr. Crevecoeur as temporary president, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. I'd like to now turn it over to Dr. Crevecoeur.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I will now open the floor to the nomination for the office of president.
I would like to nominate Dr. Amy Bader.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, and if there is no objection, I declare the nomination closed. Is there any public comment? Board members in favor of electing Dr. Amy Bader as president, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Congratulations, Amy. I will now open the floor to nomination for the office of vice president. Is there vice president?
I elect Dr. Deborah Anderson.
Is there another nomination for vice president?
We need a second.
I'll second for Dr. Anderson.
Seeing none, and if there's no objection, I declare the nominations closed. Is there any public comment? Board members in favor of electing Dr. Deborah Anderson as vice president, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Deb.
Thanks.
I would like to congratulate Dr. Bader and Dr. Anderson on their re-election to the roles of president and vice president respectively. We look forward to your continued leadership in the year ahead. I will now turn it over to Dr. Bader to handle the remaining items on the agenda.
Thank you, Carlene, and thank you very much to the board. I appreciate you entrusting me with this role and your confidence in Dr. Anderson and I moving forward in the coming year. We look forward to serving you in this capacity. So the next item on our agenda is the 2025 annual appointments. This is shown in attachment 3A. Board members, please take a moment to review the roles provided. Highlighted in color are changes, so new different people on those sections, so to try and bring your attention to those items. I'd like to request a motion to accept the appointments as listed on the agenda. Okay. That's been moved, seconded.
Dr. Crevecoeur, second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion regarding this item? Any public comment on the annual appointments? No. All right. Board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed. Agenda item 3B is a list of the 2025 school board meeting dates. The dates reflect the board's practice to meet on the first and third Monday of each month, except where noted. Meetings will continue to be held at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom at Panorama Village. Rare exceptions, certain religious holidays and things, we sometimes make an adjustment on those dates. I'd like to request a motion to accept the meeting dates as listed.
Huff so moved.
Anderson, second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion for the meeting dates? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment? All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Excellent. I'd now like to adjourn the reorganization meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors to move on to the committee of the whole. I don't know. Okay. All right. I feel like this is a lot of gaveling, but I'd like to call to order the December 2nd, 2024 Committee of the Whole Regular Board Meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. So good evening, everyone. Welcome again to any joining us remotely if you've just joined. Since the Pledge of Allegiance was already covered just a few minutes ago with the organizational meeting, we're going to proceed directly to the roll call of board members.
Dr. Bader,
Here.
Dr. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Brandt,
Here.
Dr. Buck,
Here.
Dr. Crevecore,
Here.
Dr. Demo,
Here.
Ms. Huff,
Here.
Mr. Colby,
Here.
and Dr. Miller.
Here.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Dr. Bucher to provide the superintendent update for this evening.
Thank you. Welcome to State High, an event for 8th grade students and families who are attending charter, private, and cyber schools, or those who were homeschooled. Will be held on December 11th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This event will be held to introduce those students and families to the high school as they consider their educational options for the 24-25 school year. During the open house, we will have tours of the building, question and answer session, registration information, course overviews and selection requests, athletics, clubs, and activities information, as well as connecting with our parent-teacher student organization, PTSOs. In addition, additional details can be found on our district's website. We are excited to meet the new students and our families, and look forward to welcoming them to 9th grade next school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bucher. Currently, we don't have any initiatives this evening, so thanks for joining us still, Grace. Legislative update. Jackie, do you have anything you want to apprise us on?
Yeah, I just wanted to give everyone an update that the Pennsylvania Department of Education has announced that aspiring educators can now receive an intern certificate for free, enabling them to enter the classroom and teach for up to 3 years while taking education classes on the path to earning their full teaching certification. So this is pretty new and like details forthcoming, but just wanted to let you all know about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Center Region Council of Governments reports. Gretchen or Peter, do you have any update from the COG?
Peter? Okay, I will give a full COG report, so get ready. Okay, so the Parks Governance meeting met on November 27th. The committee has met for more than 2 years and finally took formal action and voted unanimously to recommend to the COG Executive Committee that the current governance structure remain in place as the best governance structure for the Parks and Recreation Authority to achieve its mission purpose, and further recommended that the General Forum recommends that the Special Committee continue its work on its next area of responsibility of recommending the best governing documents to achieve that mission purpose, meaning the bylaws, MOUs, articles of agreement, etc. The Climate Action and Sustainability Committee met on November 12th. Just about this committee, SCASD has representation on this committee but does not vote. Every month, SCASD has the ability to give a report to this committee. So if anyone ever has anything they would like to be included in this communication, please email me and let me know, and I will communicate that to that committee. They discussed also an at-door waiver policy and they approved the adoption of this at-door fee waiver policy and the at-door fee waiver application by the COG Refuse and Recycling Program for residents participating in curbside residential refuse collection in the municipalities and the COG Regional Refuse and Recycling Contract. The COG residential refuse and recycling contracts have required the hauler to provide at-door refuse service. The refuse hauler collects the refuse at the door at no extra fee for households which qualify for this service under the Americans with Disability Act. Residents requesting this fee waiver submit documentation of disability to the COG Refuse and Recycling Program, which is then forwarded to the township managers for approval. This new policy codifies the existing practice. They also discussed the Sustainable Community Stewardship Network. The committee provided feedback on the creation of a Sustainable Community Stewardship Network to support community actions that align with the Center Region Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. Examples of the action include education and outreach components such as outreach programs to transition to low-carbon transportation, educate property owners on sustainable landscaping practices, and to create an education campaign to increase diversion from landfill. The CAS committee discussed and provided feedback on the Sustainability Community Stewardship Network. The Center Region Parks and Rec Authority met on November 21st. There's been an ongoing update from the Thompson Woods Preserve Governance Committee. I'm just going to tell you what this committee does. The status of governance of Thompson Woods, the Borough, College Township, Center Region Parks and Rec, and Clearwater Conservancy are all caretakers of the preserve, and there are ongoing meetings about who should take care of what and who should pay, for example, signage, trail maintenance, trash collection, enforcement of rules, etc. There's been a lot of governance problems with the preserve, and so we get monthly updates on that. And they also discussed the meeting schedule for 2025, which will include quarterly work sessions on the following topics. Quarter 1, Comprehensive Recreation Parks and Open Spaces Plan, Quarter 2, Program Plan, Quarter 3, Fee Policy, and Quarter 4, Budget. And hopefully this will improve communications from the rest of the COG with the authority. The Parks Authority meetings will be held on the third Thursday of each month at 12:15 for regular meetings and 10 a.m. for quarterly work sessions. We also got an update on the Whitehall Road Regional Park Phase 1 project and change order request from Stahl Schaefer Engineering. Currently, CRPR does not have an occupancy permit at the park, so staff are not able to schedule anything in the park, and this is one of the reasons, the primary reason that the park is not yet open. In order to obtain the occupancy permit, stormwater infiltration testing and report must be submitted. The authority voted to authorize a change order for Stahl Schaefer Engineering to conduct stormwater infiltration testing and to submit a report in the amount not to exceed $11,000. On October 24th, there was a grand opening of the Millbrook Marsh Nature Center, Spring Creek Education Building Phase 2, and Diane Curley Welcome Pavilion. It is a beautiful space that the community will enjoy for many years to come, and SCASD has programming at the marsh, so perhaps the students in SCASD will also go in and do programming in this building when they do their field trips there. The COG Safety Committee, Public Safety Committee, met on November 12th. The Center Region Fire Protection Program's fire truck supplier has offered an electric fire truck. The Center Region's dealer, Glick Fire Equipment, has made their Volterra demonstration vehicle available to the Center Region. So there might be an electric fire truck coming to our area. And lastly, the Urban Research and Rescue Task Force asset. The Center Region has been planning and training for the transfer of the South Central Mountain Regional Task Force USAR asset. The asset is a large box truck stocked with equipment necessary to perform rescues during structural collapse incidents. It is currently housed elsewhere, but due to an increased risk and need for this resource in our area, it is being transferred here. The General Forum has not met since our last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not a consent item or action item this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public comment in person? Okay. Anyone online? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee. We're going to start off with the Delta Transition Committee update. Dr. Bucher and Dr. Downs are going to provide that information on their transition initiatives. And I know we have a representative too here in the audience, I know, from the Delta School.
Thank you. So, thank you for having John and I here today. So, as you may recall, on May 6th, 2024, at the board meeting, the Delta Committee was presented suggestions from the superintendent to the board regarding Delta becoming a school for the 24-25 school year. The superintendent later made a recommendation with the caveat that the transition committee be formed to facilitate a smooth transition for next school year for Delta Middle and Delta High School. And I'll ask John to pick up from there for the work that he and the committee led.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're back. I gave you a little sneak peek about 2 months ago with Peter's prodding. The transition committee was formed over the summer and has met 7 times. This throughout the end of August and through the fall. It includes Delta students, middle and high, Delta parents, middle and high, staff, middle and high, an alumni staff member, also a state high administrator and a state high school counselor, and Dr. Bucher as well. As I mentioned, we've met 7 times to try to answer some of the questions that we requested that we have some input on moving forward. So we'll go over a little bit of some of those questions tonight. The biggest question at hand was, what are we going to call this place? The committee first asked, does the community want to keep Delta in the name? Let's start there. And so we put out a survey, and we got about 96% support in the first go around. But that's not good enough for Delta because we operate on a consensus model, which is 100% support. And the second go-around, if we don't have 100%, we need 80% plus more. So in the second go-around with 236 votes, including community members, parents, students, we had 95.8% to keep Delta in the name. So that was the first task at hand. And then we asked, as part of those surveys to the community, iterations, what they would like with Delta as kind of the foundation. What would you like the school to be called? And there were 3 final nominations, Delta High School and Delta Middle School, Delta High Community School and Delta Middle Community School, and then third, Delta High School of State College and Delta Middle School of State College. And with 330 votes cast, 254 went to Delta High School and Delta Middle School, and the other 2 had 38 votes each for first choices. And so with that, the committee is recommending, with the start of the 25-26 school year, that the schools be called Delta High School and Delta Middle School. That's up for you guys to vote on and decide, I think, though. And so now, once we have that name supported and established, we have a subcommittee that's going to go into the branding of the school, the schools, I should say, and do we need to create a new logo? We have a logo that's been in existence. Jeff Buderbaugh was a student's name who created it probably 10 to 12 years ago. I don't want to date myself, but about then. And so we are probably going to go through a similar process, asking for proposals for what the insignia would look like and what we want that to capture. And so there'll be a subcommittee working on that. So more information to come on the branding of Delta High School and Delta Middle School. What's going to be on the diploma? That was a big question last year. Some concerns about how the diplomas are going to read. And so in conversations with State High Administration, we came to the agreement that we would like the diplomas to read for all State College School District graduates, State College Area School District, which is kind of, I think, a nice touch from my personal perspective, with 1 graduate but 2 in the system. It captures a K-12 experience and not just the high school experience. So I think that kind of aligns too with the walks our kids are doing through the elementary schools, the teacher and staff tunnel at graduation. So I think it kind of is a nice touch that the graduates of the State College Area School District, regardless if they're from Delta High School or State High. Now the diploma covers will also read State College Area School District, and on the inside cover, the building that they had for their senior year will be a sketch or an artist rendering of State High, if they were a senior at State High, and Delta High School if they were a senior at Delta High School. So a little bit customized touch when they receive their diploma covers. We also thought that we would keep one graduation ceremony, one commencement ceremony as it kind of operates now. Award ceremony, we talked about senior award ceremony, same setup as we have now with senior awards. One thing we're working through now with Randy Brown, the business office, is for the scholarships. Some of the descriptions right now say state high graduate, and so we're working with the foundation, Randy, to change that to state college area school district graduate, so it feels all-encompassing to all of our 12th graders. So we talked about graduation. Graduation requirements are not going to change at this point. That's a much longer process that we haven't gotten into yet. So those still would remain the same. If there's a desire for that to change, that would be down the road, I would say. We will work on creating a new graduation profile that'll be to reflect the school once the school is created for the 25-26 school year. So all these changes coming, we have to remember this isn't coming until start the 25-26, but all of these senior impacts won't happen until the spring and in June of 2026. So those are the questions we have answered so far. We have a couple subcommittees working on the branding and things of that sort, but happy to answer any questions people have about the process or where we're at.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm wondering if there's been anything, I mean, you've been at Delta for just a few years. Okay, 17 years. And I wonder if there's anything in the course of doing this over the last few months that has surprised you.
I've been surprised how fast it has gone. I always say when democracy is done well, it takes a long time. If it goes quickly, it might have some corruption involved, is what I always say. But I think the committee's done a great job of, like, we know what our target date was to be here on December 2nd, right? You guys tasked us with that at our request, right? We requested a year kind of suspending of making this move so we could have time to make these decisions. And so we made that request, and so I think people took this timeline seriously, that we've been granted that grace period, so let's take advantage of it. So I think nailing down Delta as being part of the name was the first big task out of the way. After that, it's gone pretty smoothly, and meeting quite often with state high administrators, twice a month at minimum. I think it's just been a pretty smooth process overall, so yeah, just how quick it's gone, actually. Bless you.
Bless you. And is there anything, I mean, we have these really nicely nice bullet points. These are very discreet. Is there anything, I just asked you about, was there a surprise? Is there anything maybe in the mood of the school in this change that we ought to understand as a board?
I think a big hurdle to mentally get over for some families, maybe some students, is what it's going to say on the transcript and diploma. So I didn't touch upon the transcript. So right now, the transcript has and continues to say across the top, State College Area School District. Off to the side, in the address box, it'll say the Delta program, 653 Westerly Parkway, if they're a Delta senior, or I'll say State College Area High School with 650 Westerly Parkway. So that's going to stay the same. I think people were concerned that the transcript would have major overhauls and they'd be at disadvantage. So I think that and the diploma have settled some nerves and some anxiety from my perspective. And so once we kind of flushed out those answers, I think people have really settled into this process.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, Carlene?
Yes, thank you so much for keeping us up to date on this, because it's, the community, everybody really wants to know what's going on. And the question I have is about the data that's going to be collected. Like, when somebody looks up Delta School for the 25-26, we're not going to really have any data collected because of the fact that it'll be blank. Like, so my question is basically on the data when somebody looks up the Delta School. So 25-26 school year, there's not going to be any. It's going to be like pending.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So once the school year is completed, the information will be uploaded to the state, And just like for the high school, it'll be processed, and then about this time the following year, there'll be data that's coming out through the Future Ready program, as well as the other, like Niche and GradeSchools.com will also pull from that same data set. So it would be about a year until something would be visible on websites from the state and other places.
Is there anything in the description of the school that marks like when it was, I guess probably a lot of them are so old that they wouldn't have, which it would be nice if the state had something like that on there, like, instituted or organized at, in this year, so that you have a sense of how much data, that they're talking about. Although I think they've only been posting for how many years for Future Ready?
Maybe 10 years,
Is that
I'm
long?
guessing.
Okay.
That's a great question. We can look into that, but I think the internal profile that's mentioned in the memo is what is sent with the transcripts, which we've already been doing for the Delta program to explain what Delta is. We'll continue just like State High has one. Delta will have that'll be the first data set that's available because we'll have our own internal information to share.
That's a good point. I never looked at how much data, because it's just the previous year. Other questions? Well, if there's no objection, I'll ask our Delta representative who's with us this evening if she wants to add anything in particular. And you don't have to, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to.
Whatever's in your heart.
Hi. Okay. Hi. My name is Angeline. I'm a member of the Delta community. I transferred halfway through my sophomore year, and I've been loving it here ever since. I'm a 12th grader. I'm going to graduate next spring. And I've been kind of following along how the transition has been going, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives. A few of the the ones that I guess most people were concerned about was they just felt like they weren't getting all of the story, which can be a familiar feeling when it comes to school administration, which is not not that you're not giving us all the story, but democracy takes a long time, and sometimes it's hard to feel like you have a voice. I think people in Delta, due to it being a democratic school and a democratic society, are so used to being able to have their voice heard that when we're posed with a situation like this where they don't feel like they get the final say, it's hard to adjust to not having their voice heard, because I was elected by an entire student body for 2 positions. We elect all of our policies, all of our people into what positions get run within our student council. And so adjusting to the concept of we don't get the ultimate final say in whether our program becomes a school or not, I think can be very hard for some students. I noticed some students were concerned about the culture of Delta changing, which is, culture is always going to change. I'm going into studying culture, and I really love looking at culture. It's always going to change. That's a natural thing. Humans grow and evolve. But Delta has a heart to it and a warmth to it that I think people were afraid of it would lose if it became a school. And I don't think that's true. I think that Delta is the people within it, that Delta, the warmth, comes from the people, not the program, not the name of the program, not our status as a school. I think we are the people that make Delta what it is. And just because something like our school motto is Delta means change, the Greek letter means change, I don't think that something change isn't always bad. It's definitely hard to adjust to sometimes, but Delta is made up of the people that love and care and put so much work into our community that we have 500 million sub-communities operating within our school. We have an entire committee run by one of my friends that is dedicated to making our school more colorful and putting stuff like pillows in our environment just to make it more open and to make people feel more homey.
Yeah, it's a
And
unique place. It's a unique place, yeah.
And that's the love in it. That's
Yes.
why I love it. And so no matter what our statuses. There's definitely people concerned about the intricacies of our status, but no matter our status, it's the people that make up the place, not the place itself.
Yeah, and I think the one suggestion I would have is while it can be hard to not have the final say, part of the reason why you don't have the final say is because you're also part of this larger community, and we consider you part of our community. And so our whole community gets a little bit of input in that process, and that's why it kind of squeaks off into that other direction. So I, as a therapist would say, I would reframe that as into you don't, it's not that you don't get to, it's that you're lucky to be part of this bigger community, and you have to include the whole community when you're in a part of a bigger community. So that's maybe one way to think about it. Thanks so much for your input. Anything else from board members?
Just one more final
Sure.
point. We have at kind of every step included our advisory council, middle school, high school advisory council, the PTSO, and our monthly meetings with updates. So I think that's why the information's been shared and shared and shared along, very transparent along the way. So back to Peter's point, I think that's why kind of it's gone fairly smoothly and fairly quickly too.
Sure. And we've been talking about, as we made the decision to make it a school, these were all conversations that we were lucky enough to start in advance. So that's great to hear. All right, thanks so much. I think then we can move on to Facilities Committee. I'd like to call on Mr. Brown and Mr. Fisher. They're going to provide an overview of the bids received for Mountain Ending Elementary Addition Project.
Good evening. Mr. Fisher had an unexpected personal issue, so he's not able to join us tonight, but Mr. Straub is joining virtually and is able to help answer questions as well.
Great, welcome, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
So I have just a very brief slideshow that I'd like to go through with you, in addition to the materials that were presented and attached to your agenda this evening. So we did open bids on last Tuesday, November 26th. We have a bid summary. The apparent low bidders at this point are, for general, would be ECI Construction, and if my memory serves me correctly, they are the general contractor on our physical plant building. The HVAC contractor was Silvertip Incorporated. They also were the apparent low bidder for plumbing. Electrical was Lecce Electric Incorporated. If looking at base bids, that total would be $21,052,700. Our estimate was just shy of $20 million. Our bids do come in over budget by about $1,060,000, which is about 5.3 over budget. If we accept all alternates, the total is actually lower than the base bid because there are two of the alternates that would be a deduction, and we'll go through that in a little bit. So then our percentage to budget would be just about 2.6%. So speaking of the ad alternates, they were unclassified construction, which that is related to soils. And so if during the excavation process there are rock largely which would make the soils to be unclassified and unsuitable, there's an alternate which is typically put into construction projects like this, that the contractor for a flat dollar amount will deal with all unclassified soils and construction conditions, or we will pay a per unit charge. Throughout my time, especially over the last 5 building projects, I think we've done a mixture of accepted the alternate and as well as not accepted the alternate and then paid the per unit charge. At this point in time, and understand that last week these bids were opened on Tuesday. We worked on them Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we had the holiday and got your materials out to you. So we still have some evaluation to do on some of these alternates, but this one at this point in time we would recommend accepting because of the favorable bid that we received. outdoor storage addition, that is instead of, many of our buildings have sheds or a shed or multiple sheds for storage materials for outside of the physical plant, taking care of mowers and different tools, sometimes also physical education equipment. And what we did was we asked the architects and engineers to design a small addition to the building, and we asked for a quote on an alternate bid for that space to be a formal attachment to the building instead of sheds. Given the cost and the low maintenance that would be then associated with this addition, we are looking to accept this bid, recommend accepting this bid as well. The existing stage addition, so in the multipurpose room, which is cafeteria and gymnasium right now, there is a stage. And one of the requests that came from the staff was, can we look at possibly expanding the stage? One of, if not the only school that I can think of that had a similarity was Grace Woods. They have a stage that comes out further into the room. Theirs actually had a series of steps that went down that create different levels for performances and different things. Unfortunately, the Mount Nittany design was not able to include those steps to give us that flexibility without foregoing a lot of storage space underneath the stage. And so after we have reviewed the design and looking at the cost, we're expecting that we would reject that bid. Have spoken to the principal, who was not involved in the design process, but have spoken to her briefly, and we'll be asking her to talk to her staff about this. But we, at this point, for the cost, we are expecting that we would reject that bid. The photovoltaic array, because of the board's direction on solar, the administration would like to gain more information from the board before making a recommendation. I do know that we are working to get a payback period for the cost of that solar array. In addition, the Solar for Schools grant is a possibility. We do believe that will be pretty competitive, so it may not be a guarantee like the IRA funding, but we are prepared to and have already begun working on a grant application should you take that, or it's not taking that alternate, it would be rejecting the alternate because the array is already in the project. So that is one of the items that would be an add deduct.
I mean, it's still an alternate, but it's a deduct alternate.
It's
really,
deduct alternate,
it's still,
not an add
we still have
deduct.
to accept, if it's a deduct alternate and we accept it, then we don't do the array. This is where it gets really confusing with
Correct.
add alternates and deduct alternates, but yeah,
Correct.
it'll be,
Right.
when, I'm sure the team, when it comes forward with their recommendation, it'll be really clearly defined, but
Correct.
does get
Yes.
boggled in your mind easily.
Yes. The sod athletic field, so there's one rectangular field and then a softball field or a diamond field that will be disrupted during construction. That is why, especially the rectangular field, that disruption is why we asked you to install, what you allowed us to, a sod field in the just outside this building to be available for not only physical education for the elementary school students, but also for intramurals and athletic programs for the middle school students. In looking at alternates, one of the alternates we asked for also was putting sod down to replace that field as well as the softball field, the diamond field. In looking, we are still trying to determine whether we believe that the cost is worthy, because we'll be going without those two fields for a year and a half. What would be another year or another or so till we would plant seed and build up that base. So we're still balancing that out with that cost. And then next gen automation. Next gen is an alternate vendor for the building automation systems to run the HVAC systems. The building was was designed with a different automation system, and NextGen is an alternate, and it has a lower cost. And so if you accepted that alternate, then the cost would decrease. And the engineers have been working with Mr. Fisher, and we are satisfied with that option, especially for the cost savings, so that we expect to accept that alternate. So I'm just going to wrap up here and then let Jeff Straub speak about the process and the bids. So in 2 weeks, on the 16th, we expect you to be presented with bid acceptance and recommendations on alternates. And then in January 25, we'll not only secure contracts with all of the bidders and work to get construction started as quickly as possible, we'll also be returning with Tom Beckett, our financial advisor, to continue the financing discussion. And it's not just a one project financing discussion. We're also looking at the Park Forest Middle School project in the near future, as well as our district-wide facility master plan. So, before Jeff begins, does anyone have any questions at this time, or would you like to wait? Obviously, there'll be time for questions after Mr. Straub as well.
I had one question, Randy, because the next gen, I've read it like 4 times, and I know you just sort of explained it, but I'm not totally following the systems. So we have a system, let's just call it System A. It's already there. And initially, the bid included extending that system?
I believe that that's correct. Jeff, is that correct?
And then, but if we decide to do a deduct, we're not going to extend the system that already exists, and we're going to do what? We're going to put a whole new system in for the whole building?
It's not a whole new system, but Jeff can probably speak to it better.
I'm just trying to understand how they're going to work together.
I can definitely jump in on that
Okay.
one.
Am I the only one?
Am I
that
coming
it
through
wasn't
clearly?
clear to me. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, okay. So you hit it almost perfectly. It's almost System A versus System B. The building does have a company called Automated Logic in the building right now, which we designed around. But the district also works regularly with NextGen. So that was the reason that we had it as an alternate, and it actually wasn't an add or a deduct alternate. We weren't sure if it would be an add or a deduct because the two companies are competitively pricing against each other. So in this case, it turned out that NextGen was a lower cost. The district feels comfortable about accepting it because they've worked with NextGen at other buildings. We are confirming that with the engineers. That's why we with the holidays, we just wanted a little bit more time to talk to the engineers. But we anticipate that we would recommend that for you for approval on the 16th.
So where my hang up is does this mean we'll have 2 separate automated systems in the building, one in the addition and so that's what my question is. How are they going to work together?
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear enough on that. The whole building would then become NextGen.
Okay, so it would update the entire systems for the whole building.
And it took me a while to
And that'll be less
to grasp
money.
This. Yes.
Okay, that's why
Right.
it was hard to
And-
grasp.
Yes, and like Mr. So right now we have Automated Logic, and so the bid would be, the base bid is add Automated Logic into the addition. The alternate is put NextGen everywhere, which it's not a whole new HVAC system, it's just the building automation system, the controls. And so putting a NextGen in the entire building, replacing the Automated Logic as well as in the addition, is a lower cost.
That sounds great, and
And
it'll be brand new stuff, so hopefully it'll
Correct.
last longer.
And like he said, we already have both systems in the district, and so, and Mr. Fisher is fine with either one.
Okay, now I'm following. Thank you very much. Other pressing questions before we move on? Sorry, that one I needed to make sense
Nope,
right
that's
away.
fine.
All right, what, go ahead. Oh, yeah, Aaron, go ahead.
Are we moving on with this, or, because I was just wondering, you were saying you were looking for guidance from the board about the solar?
Yeah, I was going to let Mr.
Oh, okay.
Straub speak unless you had other questions. Okay, Jeff, go ahead with any of your comments.
Thanks, Randy. I really don't have a lot more. I think the bids and the presentation by Mr. Brown are pretty straightforward with the numbers that we received last week. We did get quite a lot of competition. We had 3 general contractors bid the project, 3 HVAC, 3 plumbers, and 4 electricians, and the bids were pretty competitive between each of them. And all the contractors have stated that they are comfortable with their low bids that we're presenting to you this evening. So nobody's going to be dropping out or changing their bids. And so really, any questions that you would have about these specific alternates, and otherwise we'll start preparing things for the 16th. And any ultimately the alternates that you would like to select or not select for the project. After the 16th, we would issue intent to award letters the next day to the contractors. And then I would assume we'll be about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more with the holidays and the new year. But essentially, we would get all the contractors under contract at the beginning of January to start construction.
So thank you, Jeff. So if there are any additional questions except for the solar array, let's just start there. Again, on the screen and in your materials, we have explained what our intent is at this point in time, unless we find out additional information. But are there any questions regarding any of those except for the solar array?
On the athletic fields, so I know we're creating or upgrading the rectangular field inside the loop that will take the place of the one that's going to need to be dealt with. What are we doing for the softball field? Are we just not having a softball field?
There won't be a softball field in that location. We will be using Sichler Field, which
Okay.
More frequently.
Okay. So we have an alternative for the
We have an
softball
alternative,
as well?
yes. We're not
Okay.
we're not having a team.
I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure what we were doing, so
No,
that
that's a very fair
factors in.
question. And just for your own edification, the sod field that was installed this summer, what the installer told us that it was ready, we could use it this fall, but we chose, based upon the desires of our athletic folks, as well as physical education, that since they had the capacity to not use it, they wanted to wait and just give it a little bit longer time. So if you didn't see anyone using it, and if anyone wonders why it wasn't used, that's why. But it is ready to go for spring whenever the other fields are taken offline.
That's good to know. Yes, Gretchen?
I don't have a question about the solar array, but I have a question about the grant.
Sure.
So, you said that, we're expecting that to be an extremely competitive grant.
Solars for School is
Yeah.
expected to be a very competitive program, meaning the demand is expected to outweigh the supply of funding. And there is a component of economic viability of the community and district that will play into that.
Yeah, okay.
So I would
That
not,
answers my question.
so I would not guarantee that we will get that cost, get that funding. We're still working on it. We're working on it in all sincerity until we're told not to. But we are just not as confident with that as we are the IRA funding.
And when you, I'm just curious, so clearly, you know that this is a very competitive grant. Is that, you hear that from like Crabtree or from,
Multiple sources,
okay,
like our association, Crabtree.
right, okay. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, so essentially, I think they announced when it came out that it would kind of be weighted toward districts with less financial resources.
Correct.
So that might make it hard for us, unfortunately.
Correct.
Okay, anything else?
So
I got the impression that you're already working on some more information about the solar array, but I guess just to be clear, the things that I would like to know to make sure that we can make an informed decision is, what is the cost total? What is the expected cost to us after the grants? I need, because I'm not a solar person, I need somebody else to do the math that says how much, like, there's words in here about the solar array. It doesn't mean anything to me. How much energy is that going to produce? What is that relative to the amount of energy that the district uses as a whole? And what you've already said, how long is it going to take to recoup the costs of building the solar array? Because we just entered into a PPA where we have to buy a certain amount of energy. And that amount that we've committed to buy is approximately what our district is using,
Used most recent 12 months.
right? So I'm just trying to figure out
I understand.
how much extra energy are we going to be
Jeff, am I correct that
generating?
the size of this array is relatively small compared to the needs of the building, let alone obviously the needs of the district?
Correct, Randy. I mean, it is a large array, but it's not like 50% of the building's energy. But we can have that prepared this week for the board to present that information. We just couldn't get hold of the engineers during the holiday to run those numbers.
That's totally fine. I didn't expect it for tonight. That's just why I'm asking the question now, so if we could have it for 2 weeks from now when we have to decide.
Right.
Thank you.
Most definitely.
Jeff, do you have the amount of deduction that we would be incurring? I can't get to that number on my screen right now.
I just did the quick math. It's 380,000 for the array after the IRA funding, which we're very sure will process. The array becomes $266,000. So that should drop the payback time period substantially, and we'll get that for you very quickly. I think Mike Fisher was looking at it, and then we were also going to have the engineers look at it, so you have sort of two different approaches.
And Jeff, I know it may not be as relevant, but when we did the high school, there was a lot of conversation with that in the elementaries about the need for the solar array to meet LEED standards. So if you can just clarify whether that's important for that at all. I know you usually do, but that would be another just piece of information to make it a complete picture.
Okay, we can add some. I mean, it is definitely going to improve the LEED certification substantially, but at the same time, we want to be looking at payback period for the district.
Absolutely, yeah.
So just one other question then about the solar array, because it sounds like if it's fairly small, doesn't cover a huge proportion of the energy that the building needs, but the energy needs of the building, my understanding would be changed based on the season. So if we're looking at the summer, for instance, which is when a lot of this solar energy gets generated, if we don't use all of it, does that go back into the grid, and do we get a credit for that? Or, because I've heard of that being the case, but sometimes it's not.
Jeff?
Yes, very good question. It does go back into the grid, so it reduces your overall yearly input for the facility. So it's not like if you're producing that energy during the summer, it's lost. That is definitely recouped.
Good question. Anything else?
So, were you gonna say something?
My rudimentary calculation for the array looks like it would be about 220,000 kilowatt hours a year, which might be a quarter of the building. Jeff, maybe.
I think the memo says 157.
I think you're in the order of magnitude. I was trying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So
I apologize.
Yeah.
I think you're in the order of magnitude. The 30 to 40% is correct. What's the other thing that's playing into this is the geothermal. So it's a very efficient building overall. So that's probably going to drive up the percentage of solar for overall energy production in the building. If I was, what I've seen at other districts very often, because school districts get very, obviously very competitive electrical rates, we normally will see a 12 to 15 year payback. I actually think that's what we saw when we ran the numbers for the elementary schools last time.
Yep.
But with this grant, I would assume that it's going to drive that payback down somewhere to the, conservatively 8 to 12 year payback. But we'll definitely have all that information for you to make your decision.
And Jeff, am I correct that, well, I'm not going to ask the question this way. Can you please compare or contrast the size of this array to the arrays on the other three elementary schools?
Without having that, I wasn't expecting that exact question tonight. But the array is quite larger than the arrays that we were putting on the other three elementary schools. Just because solar has changed over the years, it's become more efficient cost-wise. So we're starting to see solar arrays more regularly on buildings.
I think that's a question or information that we should have available, especially for some of our newer board members.
Yeah, because are you talking about is it only on the new section, or is it basically installed up on the?
I can answer all of those questions.
Okay, I missed that. You're right. It does say that. I apologize.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Unusually, or this may seem a little, I don't know what the word is, counterintuitive. We're actually putting the array on the existing building, not on the new addition. And the reason we're doing that is it can then be installed earlier in the project. We don't have to wait for the new building to be built. Essentially, the solar array could be installed this coming spring, summer.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. I'm sorry, I've forgotten that I read that part.
Okay, so we'll continue to move forward with that, and depending on our analysis of the payback and things, then we'll either leave it open-ended or we will make a recommendation.
Sounds good.
All right? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff, for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.
Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jeff.
So next up, we have the Finance Committee. Mr. Brown and Mr. Vigilone will present an update on the 2023-2024 draft audited financial statements, followed by an overview of the proposed preliminary budget for 2025-2026.
So Mr. Vigilone is going to provide some brief information following our Finance Committee meeting last week, where Baker Tilly presented to the committee some information about our audit. And we are very pleased once again that we have a clean audit, and we are once again we enjoyed a very good audit season with the audit firm, and we're glad that we have a fiscal year behind us, and now we're able to work just in 2 years, the current year and next year.
Thank you, Randy. Attached to your agenda, you have 70 pages of pure excitement broken down into 3 different segments. The first one is a management discussion analysis. It's basically a summary of the financial statements. Then pages 12 through 52 are your general purpose financial statements and footnotes. And then the last about 15 pages is federal programs. As Randy mentioned, there was an extended presentation by the auditors at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting on November 26th, which really represented the culmination of about 3 to 4 months worth of work by the accounting office, which I would like to give a special shout out to them because they really did a lot of great work. Going forward from here, we can definitely answer any questions you may have on the audit. Didn't want to dive too deep into it tonight, but we are looking for approval at the December 16th meeting for the audit. That way we can do the end of year regulatory filings for our debt and other things. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to assure and let the rest of the board know, because the minutes always don't convey like the enthusiasm and good vibes that are given at the Finance Committee meeting. But our auditors had nothing but good things to say about our finance team, both Randy, Joe, and the people working with them. And they actually said they enjoy working with them, so like they enjoy being on a team with them. So I just wanted to reiterate that, just to let you all know that it was a really nice meeting and it was good all around.
Perfect. I was going to ask you to do the same. And for newer board members that weren't able to attend, and I think we usually do this at the full board meeting as well. I can't recall where you step back. Yeah. So traditionally, our team, our finance team, step out and give us a private moment with the auditors and an opportunity for us to ask them if they have any concerns or anything they want to raise. And of course, they had none for us and nothing but great things to say about how easy our team helps make their work go. So thanks very much.
So we'll transition now to budget development. There's just a few slides that Joe is going to emphasize in the presentation tonight. Again, this material was gone over in more deeply in the finance committee meeting.
I'll be a little more verbose than the audit, but not much more, I promise. So, again, the first couple of slides are just the development introductory slides, and then to let you know what the decision points. We will be coming at the January 13th meeting for the accelerated budget opt-out resolution. What the opt-out resolution says is we'll keep it within 4%, the tax increase this year. And it doesn't mean we're going to be at 4%. It just means that it will be no more than 4%. And this is in compliance with school code. Why approve the resolution? It provides notice to the community of the intent to maintain the tax rate within the index and allows the board to consider administrative recommendations during the budget development process. Reminder that the state budget is due to be approved by the end of June. The proposed preliminary budget, we're going to look for 3 different rates coming to you this year. 0% if we didn't raise taxes, 4%, which is the Act 1 index, and 2%, which is a midpoint. That way, if there's any adjustments back and forth, it's a very easy calculation in between. Looking at the prior 3 years' tax rates, they've been averaging about 3.5% after 2 years of zero tax increase. And if you look back over the last 8 years, the tax increase has averaged about 2%. Going forward, we have shown this fund balance graph and the cliff, as we have called it, for a number of years, as I'm understanding it. This is the second year into this, but I've brought the chart forward and it's gone back a number of years. So one thing we did add is one extra special new line this year. So the blue line that's solid is a 0% tax increase this year, followed by 2% per year afterwards, an assumed rate, which is consistent on historical. The orange dotted line is 2% this year, 2% in future. The yellow dashed line is 4% this year at the Act 1 index, and then 2% each year afterwards. And then the green line would be 4% this year, and then the assumed 3% tax Act 1 index rate for tax increases going forward. The 3% is just an assumption on the Act 1 index. So looking at other local revenue assumptions, one big change is a decrease in the assessed valuation growth from 1.2% down to 0.9%. This is based upon a recommendation we got from the Center County Assessment Office. It's not due to growth in the area, it's due to growth of appeals, especially high dollar appeals that the county's assessor's office has been seeing the last few years. Other key areas of analysis include transfer tax, interim real estate tax, EIT collections, and interest rates for projections for investment income. Going forward to this slide, what you really see is the changes between the 3 tax rates is due to the change in the real estate tax rate. Everything else has been held steady. And then that carries forward on to the next slide, which is a synopsis of what you got in the appendix, also attached to this item on the agenda. Moving forward to slide 11, I think the major impact to expenditures in past year has been because of health insurance. Not only did it jump by a significant margin, but in the previous year's budgets, we did not really have a mechanism by which to access committed fund balance. This year, we added $3.5 million, which was an actuarial-based number for a worst-case scenario to our contingency. On top of that, we have accessed $3.5 million worth of our committed fund balance to pay for that worst-case scenario. But however, if it doesn't materialize and it just goes in with the normal actuarial levels, we won't use that contingency, nor will we use that fund balance. Going forward, it does utilize $3 million of committed fund balance to fund the 25-26 debt service obligation. It does not anticipate a transfer to the capital reserve fund due to the declining general fund balance. And again, as we've reiterated a number of times, personnel costs are growing, especially as we saw with health insurance last year, becoming a larger portion of our budget. Again, the items of focus for our 25-26 budget is compensation and benefits, the costs associated with Park Forest and Mount Airy Elementary, as well as the district-wide facilities master's plan and the interest rate environments, not only for deposits, but also for debt. So perhaps if interest rates decline, that can be very favorable on the debt side, but if they continue to stay at a higher level, making sure we can access those monies and lock up some of those deposit rates for an extended period of time. So the notes for our multi-year projections, we still have declining fund balances and constrained revenues. Our expenditures, especially personnel costs, with health insurance climbing at 10%, are outpacing the growth in our real estate tax base generates naturally. Going forward, this is the Finance Committee of the whole. From here, we'll go to the board meeting, maybe give you a small update at that point, and then the big one will be January 13th, where we'll be looking at approving the opt-out resolution. From there, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, go ahead, Aaron.
I'm just wondering if I'm reading this correctly, at least for this upcoming year, if I'm reading your numbers correctly, each percent increase of a tax increase is roughly $1 to $1.25 million.
I would need to pull up a different file to give you that number, but I can give you that number fairly quickly.
Okay.
If when looking at it again before the end of this meeting, I just would have to pull up a whole other set of information.
I'm doing it based on your tax increase options slide, roughly.
I think the one issue, are you referencing this slide?
Yes.
Okay. The one difference within this is the local revenue included on this slide not only includes real estate tax, but it also includes other components of tax, like earned income and as well as interest on investments and different things.
Okay.
I do have that calculation down in another spreadsheet that I can give you with a little bit of time.
Great.
Yeah, I think the challenging thing that was, for me, starting to wrap my head around budgeting is just that compounding of the impact. So it may only be $1 million or $2 million. I shouldn't say only. I know that's a large number of money, but it has impacts each year subsequently, depending on what you do in that first year, which is why you have that helpful slide of the declining balance. So, yep, that one. Other questions from board members? Peter, you look like you have a question.
No, I appreciate that, though. There are things doing, but I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay.
One other question: How do we make adjustments in the budget in a given year based on something like if inflation were to spike up again? Like, how do we kind of protect ourselves from that?
Well, we have fund balance.
Right. Yeah.
We have a contingency in our budget line.
Right.
And then there can be other changes in our budget lines. And what I mean by that is costs that we avoid.
Okay. Right.
Those would be more discretionary rather than non-discretionary. Discretionary meaning that our programs wouldn't suffer wouldn't be depleted, but, we can manage without them for a shorter period of time than longer.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I think
Thank
that
you.
covers
Thanks,
it.
Joe.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. We have one more item within Finance Committee. The last is an update of a review on our employee assistance program offerings and with several providers. So we have Mr. Brown and Ms. Simpson. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
See you.
Good evening, everyone. So this endeavor has been really exciting for Randy and I. Started shortly after I got here, and we started to uncover company after company after company that could offer us enhanced EAP services. And I'm happy to say that we're getting close to being able to make a recommendation to you, hopefully at the next meeting. And as you will see from the memo, what we're looking to do is just, expand access for our employees, also give offerings to our employees who may not be benefit eligible. So, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that covers it.
We're hoping to have it effective in January.
And Michelle just identified some needs that we would like to expand upon, and so together we've been working to find options. And as she said, we continue to find different options, and we're also a little delayed with getting some information back from different people. But we wanted to let you know that we have something in the works, and that we would like to get something approved as quickly as possible and get it into place for our employees.
So I understand the desire for expediency, but when you come, will you at least be sharing with us a little bit about who you looked at and why, the differences in some of the costs and why there's some advantages to one program over another in terms of their offerings?
Yes, we absolutely can. And all the programs seem to be constructed differently. Some of them, you have to opt in for students and then staff comes with. And other programs are just for staff. Some programs are just for insured staff. So, so that's why we haven't found, we haven't found.
That's why
all
we were
like
very
animals.
vague, because we're still in our evaluation phase.
Understood.
But we'll definitely have more information.
Yeah, it's tough when you're not comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, that concludes our committee of the whole portion of our meeting. We now have time for additional public comment. Is there anyone here in person that would like to make a comment? Do we have anyone online? All right. Then we can move on. We'll move on to the consent agenda. This includes several items to be approved with a single motion. To allow for questions or discussions, we'll review each category individually. Board members, any questions or problems with the minutes? Excellent. Next up, we have finance and personnel, purchase of some music instruments, routine service contracts, and HR recommendations. Problems or questions?
I just wanted to make a quick comment on those musical instruments, the sousaphones. I heard from one of the music teachers that the current sousaphones they had were from like the 1930s. So they're pretty excited to get new ones.
Yeah, I know this is part of kind of our new replacement cycle, which I know the music department's very excited that we've established and we've got moving and grooving, so that's good. Yeah, Carlene, did you have one?
Yeah, that's for D, the technology routine service contract.
Sure.
I just had a question on that. For the expert in the IT services, there's this revised time clock data cables. That went from 2,000 to 9,000, like a 7,000 difference. And I was really curious about that, and it just said the vendor encountered significant issues. And I was just kind of curious what these significant issues might be.
Can you help me again? Which attachment?
D.
The IT services, and if you go down those bullet points, the expert for revised quote for the time clock data cables.
Justin is on as well.
Is he? Okay. Justin, can you answer that?
Yep. So primarily, the area in the buildings where the cables are being run is not a typical area that we run cabling to. So the vendor provided the initial estimate based off of their past experience, and then whenever they got on site, they realized that it was going to need more material for wall covering for the cable, because some of those areas you can't penetrate through the wall to pull the cable down, so they have to surface mount the cable, as well as some of the areas have plenum airspace, which means that they have to run the cable a different way than they would in let's say a classroom environment. So with these being in the serving areas, they just encountered additional needs that aren't typical for their estimates that they provided us.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions on finance and personnel? Okay, instructional programs, we have out-of-state student travel. Any problems or discrepancies? Finally, we have physical plant. We've got elementary school generator addition change orders, some other change orders, purchase of some furniture, and shop equipment for our new physical plant building, which is exciting. Certainly most exciting for the physical plant staff.
For sure.
For sure. Any questions or problems? All right, seeing none, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 10 through 13 as presented.
Buck, so moved.
Have second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Any last additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on the consent agenda? All right. Board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the consent agenda has passed. Next up for action items, we have agenda item 14A. This is a 2025 professional development agreement, with Novak Education, shown in attachment 14A. Do I have a motion?
Miller, so moved.
Anderson, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussions regarding this item? Okay, any public comment? All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that item is passed. Agenda item 14B is a motion to approve the parallel learning agreement for school psychologists. This is shown in attachment 14B.
Buck, so moved.
Have second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. This is an adjustment because we had some problems with a previous provider and their ability to provide these services for us. But do you have any questions for this matter for the administration? Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that item is passed as well. Oh, goodness. That's the end of our main agenda items. So, looking forward to future meetings. Now, as I serve as president this year again, don't pack up until the future meetings are all read. I have to stay, you have to stay. So that's just my little welcome to this year. All right, Tuesday, December 10th, 2024 is Policy Development Committee. That'll be at 11 a.m., so a little bit of a different time than traditional. Oh, wait, at 8:30. I'm sorry, I said 11 and I read at my brain saw 8:30. I don't know why that came out wrong. It is a different time than usual. I knew to say that part. It's 8:30 a.m., which is not our typical time, but that's when we're meeting with the holiday schedule shifts and everything. So that'll be in the Panorama Village Boardroom. So let me say that one more time. Tuesday, December 10th, Policy Development Committee at 8:30 a.m. And then Monday, December 16th, we'll have our regular board meeting, again, here in Panorama Village Boardroom at 7 p.m. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Thanks very much. Have a good evening, everyone.